On March 18, 1925, an unprecedented natural disaster carved a path of destruction across the American heartland. The Great Tri-State Tornado, as it would later be known, tore through eastern Missouri, southern Illinois, and southern Indiana with devastating force, claiming 695 lives and injuring 2,027 more. Nearly a century later, it remains the deadliest tornado in United States history and the second deadliest worldwide. The tornado's exceptional combination of size, intensity, duration, and path through populated areas created a perfect storm of destruction that forever changed the communities in its path. Beyond the immediate devastation, this catastrophic event would ultimately influence emergency preparedness, architectural standards, and weather forecasting for generations to come. Hello, and welcome to Deadliest Disasters, where we cover some of the most devastating events that happened throughout history. The meteorological conditions that spawned the tri-state tornado were unusually severe. The day began with a powerful low-pressure system moving eastward across the central United States, creating ideal conditions for severe thunderstorms. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico collided with a cold front advancing from the northwest, creating extreme atmospheric instability. What made this particular storm system so devastating was a combination of unusually high wind speeds in the upper atmosphere and a particularly volatile temperature gradient. A little brief history of weather forecasting in the United States. On February 9, 1870, the first official weather service of the United States was run by the Secretary of War and established through a joint resolution of Congress signed by President Ulysses S. Grant. The agency first became a civilian enterprise in 1891 when it became part of the Department of Agriculture and its name officially became the U.S. Weather Bureau. The U.S. Weather Bureau was the predecessor to the National Weather Service. They lacked radar technology, advanced computer models, or satellite imagery. Weather observations were conducted at scattered stations and communicated by telegraph, making it nearly impossible to track developing storms in real time. Warning systems were rudimentary at best, consisting primarily of local observation and word-of-mouth alerts. Most communities had no advanced warning before the tornado struck. Essentially, in 1925, weather forecasting and forecasting technology at the U.S. Weather Bureau was still in its infancy. Modern meteorologists have retroactively classified the tri-state tornado as an F5 on the Fujita scale, which wasn't developed until decades later. An F5 designation indicates wind speeds exceeding 261 miles per hour with the potential for incredible damage, strong frame houses lifted from foundations and carried considerable distances, automobile-sized missiles flying through the air, and trees debarked. The tri-state tornado may have even exceeded these parameters, with some estimates suggesting it could have reached what would today be classified as an EF5+ on the enhanced Fujita scale. What truly set this tri-state tornado apart was its extraordinary path and duration. The tornado touched down at 1:01 p.m. near Ellington, Missouri, and maintained a nearly continuous damage path for the next 3.5 hours. It traveled northeast at speeds between 60 and 73 miles per hour, considerably faster than the average tornado, giving residents precious little time to seek shelter, even if warnings had been available. The tornado's path stretched an astonishing 219 miles, making it the longest continuous tornado track in world history, a record that still stands today. Most tornadoes dissipate after a few miles, but the tri-state tornado maintained its incredible intensity throughout most of its journey. Its width ranged from approximately half a mile to 1 mile wide, significantly larger than the average tornado. The tornado moved from Missouri into Illinois, where it caused the most catastrophic damage, particularly in the towns of Murfreesboro, DeSoto, Gorham, and West Frankfort. It then continued into Indiana, finally dissipating near Petersburg. Throughout its path, entire communities were leveled, with some towns losing more than half their buildings in a matter of minutes. The tornado's impact was most severe in southern Illinois, where approximately 613 of the 695 total deaths occurred. Murfreesboro, Illinois, suffered the greatest number of casualties with 234 deaths. The tornado destroyed over 40% of the town, including the entire business district and hundreds of homes. The Longfellow Elementary School was directly hit during school hours, resulting in the deaths of 17 children. DeSoto, Illinois, a small mining community, lost 33% of its population when 69 people were killed, including 33 students and teachers at the local school. West Frankfort lost 152 lives, while Gorham was almost completely destroyed with 34 deaths in a town of only 500 residents. In each community, the tornado's impact was amplified by factors such as the concentration of population, quality of construction, and the time of day. In Indiana, Griffin and Princeton suffered significant damage with 76 combined deaths. The tornado finally began to weaken and lift near Petersburg, Indiana, leaving behind a path of unprecedented destruction across these states. Personal stories from survivors paint a vivid picture of the terror and devastation. In Murfreesboro, Judith Cox, a young schoolgirl at the time, later recalled, quote, "The sky turned black as night. We heard what sounded like 1,000 freight trains. Our teacher tried to get us under our desks, but the windows exploded inward and the ceiling began to cave in," unquote. In West Frankfort, miner James Poley emerged from a shift underground to find his hometown unrecognizable and his family among the dead. The aftermath of the tornado was an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. Communication infrastructure was severely damaged, with telephone and telegraph lines down across the affected region. This hampered both the spread of news about the disaster and coordination of relief efforts. Many communities were effectively cut off from outside help for hours or even days. Local response was immediate but overwhelmed. Those who were uninjured worked frantically to pull survivors from collapsed buildings, often using bare hands to move debris. Local doctors and nurses were quickly inundated with hundreds of injured victims, many with serious trauma. Hospitals and morgues were filled beyond capacity, forcing the use of temporary facilities such as schools and churches. The Red Cross mobilized what would become one of its largest relief operations to date, establishing aid stations throughout the affected area. The Illinois National Guard was deployed to prevent looting and assist with recovery operations. Neighboring communities sent whatever assistance they could spare, but the scale of the disaster stretched resources to their limits. The medical response faced tremendous challenges given the technology and resources of 1925. Antibiotics had not yet been discovered, making infection a serious threat for the injured. Blood transfusions were still a relatively new procedure, and emergency medicine protocols were rudimentary by modern standards. These limitations undoubtedly contributed to the high casualty count. The economic impact of the tri-state tornado was staggering. In 1925 dollars, property damage was estimated at $16.5 million, which would be approximately $250 million today. But this figure fails to capture the true economic devastation. Entire business districts were destroyed, major employers like mines and factories were damaged or destroyed, and thousands were left homeless. Recovery took years for many communities. In Murfreesboro, rebuilding efforts continued throughout the late 1920s, only to be hampered by the onset of the Great Depression. Some smaller communities never fully recovered their pre-tornado population or economic vitality. However, the disaster did spark some positive changes. Building codes were gradually improved in many areas, with greater attention to structural integrity and storm resistance. Community planning began to incorporate more consideration for natural disasters, including the designation of public storm shelters and improved emergency response protocols. Perhaps most significantly, the tri-state tornado demonstrated the critical need for better weather forecasting and warning systems. Though technology limitations prevented immediate improvements, the disaster became a reference point for meteorologists and disaster planners. It highlighted the insufficiency of existing weather observation networks and communication systems, eventually contributing to the development of more comprehensive weather monitoring. When compared to other major tornadoes in U.S. history, the tri-state tornado stands apart not only for its death toll, but for its exceptional meteorological characteristics. The 2011 Joplin tornado had 158 deaths. The 2021 Mayfield, Kentucky tornado had 57 deaths. And the 1974 super outbreak had a combined 315 deaths across multiple tornadoes. These were all catastrophic events, but none approached the single tornado death toll of the tri-state tornado. What makes the 1925 disaster particularly remarkable is that it remains the deadliest U.S. tornado despite the population growth in tornado-prone regions. This can be attributed to several factors. Modern warning systems that provide crucial advance notice, improved building standards, better education about tornado safety, and advances in emergency medicine that help save those who are injured. The cultural impact of the tri-state tornado persists in the affected communities. Annual memorial services are still held in towns like Murfreesboro and West Frankfort. Monuments and historical markers dot the tornado's path, ensuring that the tragedy is never forgotten. Local historical societies maintain collections of photographs, newspaper accounts, and survivor testimonies, preserving the memory of those lost and the lessons learned. The Great Tri-State Tornado of 1925 represents a watershed moment in American disaster history. Its unprecedented destruction demonstrated nature's awesome power and humankind's vulnerability in the face of such forces. The 695 lives lost and thousands more forever changed serve as a sobering reminder of the importance of disaster preparedness, robust warning systems, and resilient infrastructure. In the 100 years since the tornado struck, advances in meteorology, construction, and emergency management have dramatically reduced the likelihood of a similar death toll from a single tornado. Doppler radar, satellite imagery, cellular emergency alerts, and reinforced public buildings now provide layers of protection that were unimaginable in 1925. But the tri-state tornado's legacy extends beyond technological advances. It lives on in the collective memory of the affected communities, in the stories passed down through generations, and in the resolve to rebuild despite devastating loss. The lessons of the Great Tri-State Tornado remain as relevant today as they were in 1925. A call to respect the power of nature, to prepare diligently for disasters, and to come together in times of crisis. Thanks for watching today's video on this devastating but important historical event. If you found this informative, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical deep dives. And let me know in the comments what other overlooked historical events you'd like to learn about. Until next time, this has been Deadliest Disasters.